It's Sunday, February 9th, 1975. I'm 9 years old, and I have to come up from the basement of my childhood. I never want to come up from the basement of my childhood. It's a magical, enchanted place. It's filled with toys, and books, and puzzles. Toys I've inherited from my older brothers. Toys my parents brought me from their trips to New York. Coin-operated parking meter from F.A.O. Schwartz. And tons of Legos. And there's the best place to hide for games of hide and seek. It's this old rag bin in the laundry room. And I can crawl in and I can be under all these freshly bleached rags and I can know that my friends will never find me there. And the thing I love most about the basement is the ceiling. Because my father, who was a busy attorney who never did anything around the house, had painted the ductwork all across the ceiling in bright primary colors, red, yellow, blue, and white. And so every time I looked up, I saw his art. I saw the art that he made for me, his little caboose. But I had to come up because I had to write a report for school on squirrels. So, squirrels. So I sat down at the dining room table with the World Book, the old red bound and I opened it up, only I wasn't reading about squirrels. I was reading about seahorses and Sephardic Jews and space aliens. And my father walked by and he saw this. And he went into his study in the front of the house. And he came back with a note card. And on the note card was a word. Only it wasn't a word, it was just letters. Dootaat. Dootaat. And I asked him, what does that mean? He said it's an acronym. It stands for do only one thing at a time. Now finish your report on the squirrels. So I did, and I finished just in the nick of time because we were going that day to my aunt and uncle's house to see their slides of New Guinea. And I was dreading this, but 9-year-old boys don't have much choice about what they get to do on Sunday afternoons. So we got in the car, my father's little Mercedes with a seat in the back just big enough for me for this 20-minute drive. And about halfway there, he turns to my mother, and he says, I'm having a Zotz. And Zotz was the term that he used for these little heart palpitations he was having, which his doctor had said, you know, it's not really anything to worry about. So my mother hands him a pill, and he puts it under his tongue. And about a minute later, he turns and he says, give me another one. And he keeps driving, and he pulls the car into the driveway, my aunt and uncle's house, parks it, stops it, and slumps forward onto the wheel. And his forehead hits the dash. And my mother shakes him, and she screams, "Bah! Bah!" And all we hear is a snort. And then she screams at me, "Call the inhalator." The inhalator? But all I know is I have to get out of the car. So I'm pushing at my mother's seat, I'm kicking, I'm trying to get the door open, and finally I manage to get out of the car and I run to my aunt and uncle's door as fast as I can. I ring the doorbell and they open the door and I scream, "Aunt Ruthie, Uncle Buddy, come quick, something's happened." And from that point on, everything went into slow motion. I remember sitting on the couch in their living room, looking out the window, knowing that my father was still in the car. I remember seeing an ambulance pull up, and men getting out, putting him on a stretcher, working on him on this frigid, cold February day with their breath steaming in the air. I remember the ambulance leaving, and then we got back in his car, well, my mother and I. My father wasn't driving, my uncle was driving. And he drove like a bat out of hell, following the ambulance to the hospital, screeching through parking lots, cutting through gas stations, up over curbs, driving this Mercedes faster probably than had ever been driven before. And we pulled into the emergency room parking lot, got out, and went in, and waited. And some kind soul handed me a styrofoam cup of ginger ale, which I drank, and we waited. And after what seemed like forever, the doctor came out, and he stood there, his arms folded, his pale blue lab coat with the name and script over the pocket. And he looked at us and he said, "We've done all we could do. I'm sorry. There's nothing more we can do." And my mouth went dry. And I took a sip of that ginger ale, but it did not taste good. And I spit it out. I threw the cup in the trash. And my mother, who never, ever cried, screamed, "Oh God, our daddy's gone." And we left the hospital, drove back, slowly this time, to my aunt and uncle's house. And I remember sitting on the couch, reading the book I had brought, because I really didn't want to see the damn slides. And the book was The Count of Monte Cristo, only I wasn't actually reading it. I was just staring at the same page. And I've never finished that book. I know the story, but I've never actually been able to go back to that book. And then I remember people showing up at their house. I remember my grandmother, my father's mother, coming in and sitting down in a chair and rocking back and forth, saying to herself, to anyone who would listen, "I hoped and prayed I would never outlive my children." And I remember my brothers coming, one from the University of Chicago on the south side, getting there, and my other brother from New Haven had flown in when he'd gotten a phone call. When he got there, he was crying, and I asked him, "Why are you crying?" And he said, "Because I couldn't cry on the plane." And my uncle sat in the green recliner in the back room of the house, and he just shook his head, and he just kept saying, "I can't believe it. I just can't believe it." And none of us could believe it. So we left their house and went home. My mother and I walked up the stairs and turned the corner to what was now her bedroom. And on the nightstand was another bottle of those pills, the pills my father had taken in the car. And she picked up the bottle and she flung it into the trash, and she said, "A lot of good these damn things did." And I slept in the shelter of her bed for months. There were other basements after my father died. Men whose lives he had touched took me into their basements. They tried to teach me photography and woodshop and other things. But I could really never go back to the basement of my childhood. Nothing could replace that. And when I did go back down there, and I looked up at the ceiling, the colors were never as bright. Thank you.